Every week, little Sophie's lunch money seemed to vanish into thin air. Her father, Mark, was puzzled and concerned about the recurring mystery. Determined to get to the bottom of it, he started to investigate, suspecting that someone at school might be bullying Sophie, but the truth he uncovered was far more alarming than he had ever anticipated. When Mark finally discovered the reason behind the missing lunch money, he was left with no choice but to call 911. Multiple police cars were rushing to the school. Teachers and students alike were completely caught off guard by the unexpected arrival of blaring sirens and multiple police officers. The headmaster had quickly emerged from his office demanding an explanation, but he was left hanging as the officers made their way into the school. And it did not take them long until they found what they were looking for. Mark had been completely right about his discovery. But what had Mark discovered at his daughter's school? Why did her lunch money keep disappearing? And why did the police have to get involved in this? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. At her school, you were considered poor and uncool if you brought your own lunch. Sophie had told her father many times that she was very afraid of getting bullied, and so she did not want to take the risk. These past couple of days, she had been borrowing money from one of her friends, and Mark had wired that money to their parents as compensation. But it was getting annoying and expensive to do this every day. Mark had questioned Sophie every time about how she lost her money, but she never had an answer for him. Sophie had always been afraid of being bullied, but it seemed like her fear had only increased these past couple of weeks. Mark feared that she was not only afraid of being bullied anymore, but that she was actually actively being bullied. Mark feared that other children at her school were taking Sophie's lunch money, and she was probably too afraid to talk about it. He used the weekend to ponder what to do. After much thinking, Mark concluded that he needed to get more information first. He needed to know the extent of the bullying before he could think of the best way to stop it. The best thing he could come up with was to secretly mic up his own daughter. Mark hit the store, weighed down by a mix of guilt and determination. He carefully selected a tiny, high-quality mic, ensuring it was small enough to be concealed but powerful enough to capture even the faintest whispers. The following morning, Mark saw his opportunity. Mark sewed the mic into a discreet section of the backpack's fabric. The device was now perfectly hidden. Watching Sophie leave for school, backpack in tow, Mark was a bundle of nerves and hope. Mark prepared himself to delve into the audio captured by the mic, waiting for Sophie's return with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Right after Sophie left, Mark downloaded the morning's recording. Finally, during a quiet moment at work, Mark sneaked to listen to a part of the recording. The sounds of school life filled his ears: chatter, laughter, the shuffle of feet. He paused the playback, still searching for answers. Sophie's return home was a replay of the past days. She looked disheartened as she told Mark her lunch money had disappeared again. She had to borrow from a friend. Mark listened, his heart sinking. He transferred the money to her friend's parents, keeping the routine normal and hiding his secret investigation. The evening passed like any other dinner, homework, and the usual father-daughter time. Inside, though, he was analyzing every detail, every sound he had heard on the recording, looking for something he might have missed. As soon as Sophie's lights were out, Mark made his move. He quietly grabbed the recorder, eager yet anxious about what it might reveal. Fast-forwarding through the morning's routine, he aimed straight for lunchtime, the critical moment when the money would vanish. Mark's focus sharpened as he reached the lunchtime recording. He expected tension, a confrontation, anything that hinted at trouble. But what filled his ears were just normal school sounds, laughter, and casual chats. Mark was left with more questions than answers. Puzzled by the lack of any mention of payment for lunch, Mark decided to investigate further. He went online, navigating to the school's official website. There, to his surprise, he discovered an announcement: lunches had been made free for all students for over a week. Sophie hadn't mentioned a word about this change. Mark stared at the screen, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to shift and form a new, unsettling picture. The realization hit Mark hard. Sophie had been lying to him. The lunches were free, yet she continued to claim her lunch money was disappearing. Why would she do that? Margaret answered Mark's call with a friendly tone that soon turned to confusion. When Mark mentioned the free lunches, Margaret was genuinely surprised. She had no idea. All she knew was her son had been giving money to Sophie, claiming she needed it for lunch. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear both Sophie and Margaret's son had been working together in this little scheme. Margaret confirmed her son had been covering Sophie's lunches for the past week, even today. This revelation added another layer to the mystery. The realization that both children had been lying, seemingly to scam money from their parents, was unsettling. Mark and Margaret pondered the situation. Mark and Margaret delved into speculation. Mark and Margaret expanded their investigation, reaching out to other parents. The calls revealed a surprising trend. Many parents shared similar tales of their children asking for extra money for various reasons, including lunch. The decision made to rely on the recordings from Sophie's mic, the group of parents settled into a tense wait, hopeful that this stealthy approach would finally provide the answers they desperately sought. The parents agreed to give it at least a week before taking their concerns to the school. They hoped the recordings would offer some clarity or lead them in a new direction. The first 2 days after their decision, Mark found himself anxiously listening to the recordings, searching for anything out of the ordinary. Yet, everything seemed normal. Sophie continued to report her lunch money missing, despite the school's policy of free lunches. Each time, her explanations were vague, lacking any reasonable justification. One afternoon, Sophie burst through the door, beaming with pride. She had received one of her best grades ever on a recent test. Mark felt a rush of pride for his daughter's achievement. Her happiness was infectious, and for a moment, all the mysteries and concerns seemed to fade away. Mark couldn't help but share Sophie's success with the other parents during their next discussion. To his surprise, many of them reported similar achievements. Their children, too, had come home with grades significantly better than usual. The pattern was too pronounced to be a coincidence. If the kids were achieving better grades under dubious circumstances, perhaps the mic had captured conversations that could explain how. The next day, Mark listened to the recordings with bated breath. What he heard confirmed his suspicions. The conversations among students hinted at a scheme that went beyond innocent academic achievement. Without a moment's hesitation, Mark dialed 911 to report his suspicions. He explained the situation as best he could, detailing the unusual pattern of improved grades and the connection to the missing lunch money. The evidence Mark had gathered was compelling, leading the authorities to take immediate action. Mark arrived at the school, his heart racing, just as the sound of sirens filled the air. Curious students and teachers emerged from classrooms, drawn by the commotion. The officers, with a clear objective in mind, moved swiftly, determined to address the issue at hand. The sudden entrance of the police caught the attention of the headmaster, who, surprised and concerned, approached the officers for clarification. He wanted to understand why such a forceful action was necessary, especially without prior notice. The headmaster's role as the guardian of the school's order and reputation made him wary of any action that could disrupt the educational environment or cast the institution in a negative light. Moments later, the crowd outside witnessed the officers escorting a young teacher out of the building, handcuffs securing her wrists. The sight was shocking, as the teacher was well-liked and had always seemed dedicated to her students. As confusion swirled among the onlookers, Mark felt a heavy responsibility to clarify the situation. He stepped forward, gathering the attention of those around him. With a somber tone, he began to explain the reason behind the police presence and the teacher's arrest. The crowd listened intently as Mark revealed the shocking truth: the teacher had been selling good grades to students in exchange for money. As Mark's explanation sank in, a wave of disbelief and anger swept through the crowd. The arrest was just the beginning of a long journey toward healing and accountability. The students, eager to boost their academic records, were paying the teacher as much money as they could gather. It became a secretive transaction, with sums of money exchanging hands in the hopes of securing a brighter academic future. The teacher's actions led her to stand trial, facing charges that could result in severe consequences. The evidence against her was overwhelming, painting a clear picture of manipulation and greed. In the aftermath of the scandal, parents and students were left picking up the pieces. The parents banded together, seeking ways to recover the money that had been deceitfully taken from them. Meanwhile, the students faced the daunting task of redoing their tests, an opportunity to earn their grades honestly, but a reminder of the trust that had been broken. The community was united in its effort to heal, but the path forward was fraught with challenges.